Okay, so basically, just in regards, so there we're getting the nitty of the actual project management itself, which is functionally managing your team, adding their actuals to a project itself. One of the big ones, obviously, is timesheets. So this is the one that's generally the unknown factor, especially for your quotas and estimators, because things are generally easy because you have price lists from suppliers, etc., like that. It's generally the profitability question mark is around how much time you'll spend or your team will spend actually on that particular project. So the idea of tracking actuals correctly in Workguru is it'll give you, even if it goes over time, for example, you'll have the accurate time spent on projects for as long as you do them. So you can actually start getting metrics and do analysis on that to feed that back into your quoting process to make sure you're quoting the correct amount of time it actually takes to do a particular task for the next time you actually get asked to do that similar task. The main thing, just in regards, just quickly with timesheets within Workguru, this is one thing that comes up a lot with questions is the difference between a payroll and a project timesheet. So Workguru is specifically around project timesheets. So we want to put time on specific projects that are run, say, throughout the day per staff member, as opposed to payroll, which basically wants to know when the overall time that staff members spent that day working. So clock on in the morning, clock off in the afternoon. The project timesheet functionality is obviously infinitely more detailed than just on and off for a work day. So we need to know what projects they're working on throughout the actual day itself. Uh, First kind of decision around timesheet capture is generally a discussion that suits your workflow, specifically whether you want staff to actually digitally capture their timesheet via obviously time. We've got a few ways we can do that through the Workguru dashboard. We've got a web timer, a kiosk, and then the final one is the question around analog timesheets. Do you want your guys to still scribble stuff down on pieces of paper and hand to a manager to enter into Workguru, say administratively, say at the end of the day or a week? So that obviously comes down to your particular workflow requirements, but just important to note that you shouldn't really discount if it's easier to get accurate times by people um, submitting timesheets paper-based. Obviously, that should be a decision that's an option that's fed into the decision making. Obviously, there's pros and cons of each. When you're doing analog timesheets, you need a staff to actually process that on the back end. And also the advantage of digital timesheets, if the guys are entering their time directly into the system, obviously that becomes hopefully a bit more accurate because it's done when it's actually happening and it's added to the projects in a more timely manner, which means your labor costs are reflected on the project almost as soon as they happened, hopefully. And that comes back to what we mentioned before. It's telling the projects what's happening, when's happening, which the when part becomes really important, like I mentioned. Um, if you can get your timesheets entered daily, that means your project profitability is daily, versus if you do weekly timesheets, that means you don't get accurate profitability on your projects until the end of the week. So it really is that simple. The other thing that's overlooked a lot in a lot of job systems, because this is generally a payroll thing as opposed to a project timesheet, is penalty rates. Workguru allows you to capture penalty multiples correctly on specific tasks. So you can track true time and a half or double time rates, and it'll pass that correct cost through to the project. So if you're burning a lot of overtime trying to get a project done on the time frame the customer's asked, it'll actually display that significant extra cost to the project in real time, so managers can actually pick up on that. Like I mentioned before, not specifically timesheets, but in regards to task completion, is that you can actually initiate kind of a progress metric by allowing tasks to be marked as complete. And that way managers can mark tasks complete regardless of the time that's been spent on them. We touched on it briefly in regards to making the system as easy as possible for your staff to use if they are entering their timesheets digitally. That's where we can essentially present the list of projects and tasks to them as in a most relevant way as possible. So, for example, first one is location-based project visibility. You can set up specific warehouse locations within Workguru, and you can tag a staff member to a specific warehouse location. So that means they're only seeing the projects that are actually part of that location. So, for example, if you've got two workshops, workshop A or workshop B, staff member in location A doesn't see projects from location B. So it's all relatively straightforward. And the next thing based on that is staff members will only see projects and or tasks that they have been specifically assigned to. That's another way it makes it nice and easy to make sure that you don't get incorrect timesheets entered. Like I mentioned before, painters only see painting tasks, so a painter can't accidentally put a timesheet against an electrical task, things like that. The other thing we've got the ability to integrate with is if you need anything that is a bit more specific around EBAs, payroll rates, and things like that. Workguru offers an integration with Tanda. Tanda is another Brisbane-based software company, stands for Time and Attendance, and their special thing is they actually interpret all of the industry pay rates, EBAs, for you automatically. So this is kind of relevant if you do have a workflow that requires a lot of overtime, etc., like that. If Workguru can pass timesheets through to Tanda and it can interpret that to apply the correct pay rates to all the different EBA rates that particular staff member might be eligible for. So that's an extra add-on, but for the guys that have used that, it saves them hours and hours, or their payroll administrators hours and hours of time. So that's something to keep in the back of your head if you have a complex pay system. Just quickly on that, one thing I haven't listed here, but obviously out of the box, Workguru will integrate directly with Xero Payroll. So it can send daily timesheets through to Xero.